I'm going to first of all thank you for your presence here. Okay, I'm sorry for my not so perfect English because I'm not a native speaker, but I believe I will be quite understandable. If you don't understand something that I say, please just tell me and I will try to explain it with other words. First of all, thank you very much to for the invitation from Philippe and for your presence here. It's a Sunday. Many times we are with our families, etc. But it's very grateful to have you here to listen me for 45 minutes, 60 minutes. Let's see how this goes. I'm just going to ask Philippe if I can share the screen if I want. Is it possible? Have I?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. I'm not sure what we need to do in order for you to be able to do that.
Let me try to. Okay,
I can.
You have to
make you a host or a co-host, probably.
If you can, please.
Yeah,
It's easier way of doing it.
Okay, just give me a second.
I don't need it right now, but I'm the host now also.
Okay. So yes, you're the boss now.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Philippe. So let's start by going direct to the point and let's trying to deconstruct what Philippe said about evidence, because I'm also a karate practitioner, student, instructor, sensei, coach, name it what you want. And I just tried to look for answers for physical conditioning for karate and also for my strength and conditioning job, that I'm a professional of the area, not only in karate, because I also had the issue with many personal opinions from karate senseis, other sports trainers, etc. And the things didn't went well. I heard some things from this person that was an authority. I heard a different thing from this person that was also an authority. This one was a coach of champions and did it like this. This one also had champions and did it like that. And we listened, and it was a little messy for my head. And I never took an answer as a yes. We do it this way because yes, or because we do it for 50 years from now, or because my master, my sensei told it. I don't have that kind of personality. I have to understand the whys of what I'm doing and training and teaching. So I decided to go to a Master of Science in Sports Training with a specialization in karate and combat sports. And then this was 2014, more or less. And then I discovered the world of evidence. I read some studies before that, but very randomly, some things here and there. Then we have the social media, where we encounter again a big mess of information. This expert says one thing, this one has another different thing, and this one, and it's also always the same problem. So I try to go direct to the source of knowledge for me in terms of physical conditioning, when we have big samples of people, athletes, non-athletes, different scenarios, different training protocols, etc., and tried to find the best answer possible in science, in evidence-based studies, practice, protocols, trainings, etc. And then I decided to start sharing that in Karate Science Academy, and the feedback is being very good, even greater than I expected, because I expected much more resistance, especially from more traditional karatekas. But the response is being really great, because I believe when we explain things, it gets easier to accept it, to at least open our mind to another different way of doing things. So let's go to speed, direct to the theme of the lesson. If you have at the end any question, please feel free to interrupt me and to talk about it. So speed, power, it's maybe probably our biggest goal in our physical conditioning. All karatecas want to be faster, want to develop more power, to score a point, to have more kime in a kata, to knock out an opponent, depending on the type of karate or competition or uncompetitive karate. We always are looking for more speed, more power, and we can get it by having a greater technique. That is very important, because the intermuscular coordination between our different muscles is very important to become more efficient. And if it is more efficient, we will be faster doing the technique. We will spend less energy in a kata or a fight if we have a more efficient technique. But besides that, we have the physical training, the strength and conditioning training that might lead us to become even faster or even more powerful in terms of physical performance. So let's talk about for me, the three biggest mistakes we make in speed training in karate. But it's not only in karate, it's also in sports in general. So let's see, I'm going to share. I'm not Flip, I'm not being able to share it. Can you?
You're the host again. I had to take it over, take it back to mute everybody, but you're the host again.
Okay, right now. Okay, great. So let me just take this. Okay, let's write a little bit so you don't sleep just listening my voice. So everything starts by this mistake. In karate, we'll still believe that more is always better. Okay, more reps, more intensity, less recovery, less rest. We always ask our karatekas to make more reps, more push-ups, more oichikis, more shikodachis, more transitions, more kata, more. And we always ask them to make it as intense as possible, as fast as possible, with the most power possible, okay? But this is not the right way of stimulating our physical speed. Why? Because the first mistake is an excessive volume of training with supposedly the goal of getting faster. But the problem is that in order to get faster, we need to perform each repetition without fatigue, or with a very residual level of fatigue. And that is only possible for a limited period of time. And we need recovery from set to set, from session to session, etc., etc. Because many times we confound two things. One is developing the maximal speed execution. Another one is developing the capacity of keeping our speed high, even, I'm sorry, where is my, even when we are fatigued. These are different things, okay? This last one is endurance training, not speed training, okay? It's also important because in a fight, for example, or a longer kata or a grading exam or a championship, etc., I need to be able to keep my levels of power or speed as high as possible, even when I'm tired, and that is important. But what I'm talking about speed training is when I identify, I will stop sharing the word. When I watch karateka in my dojo, that even when he or she is not fatigued after a normal warm-up, I ask him or I ask her to perform a very fast displacement, a very fast kick, punch, whatever, okay? And I look and I see that even in his or her best performance possible without fatigue, he needs to develop his maximal speed of movement or power, okay? Punching a bag, an opponent, a pad, whatever, okay? And that's what I'm talking about, power and speed training, the ability to get faster than we are in our baseline, okay? So it's a different thing when I ask my karateka with fatigue that he tries to keep the speed or power as higher as possible, because he needs to keep that power and speed high in a competition or a tournament or a fight, whatever. But I'm not being able to develop their maximal speed when they are already fatigued. We are developing their ability to keep speed high even when fatigued. It's very important to understand this difference, okay? For example, high intensity interval training, where we ask our karatekas to make the movement as fast as possible, it's endurance training. It's not speed or power training. It's different. Of course, if I ask my karatekas to use that methodology, always fast, 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 fast in the entire lesson, or even when they are fatigued, they will become faster compared to not doing anything, of course, okay? They will get faster compared to not making the movement faster, as fast as possible once in their lives, okay? But it's not an optimal method. It's not a long-term to keep, okay, that rhythm, and fatigue will start to install, and it will be, okay, negative for their evolution. So let's see. I think this is okay. Flip, please. Okay. Listen, doubts. Do you have any doubt about what I'm saying until now? Put in the chat, turn on your microphone and talk. What do you think about what I'm saying? Can you, if you don't agree, if you have any issue, just talk to me and let's discuss it, okay? With no problem. So I'm not here to have the reason by my side. I'm here to share knowledge, and then we clarify any doubt you may have. Okay, this is one of the problems. Volume of training is important. Yes, it's important. If I have an athlete, for example, that can train 20 hours per week, he will evolve more than a karateka that only trains twice a week, 2 hours, for example. Of course, volume is important, but for speed, I have a limit to where I should dedicate the time of my karateka to speed or power training, because from that limit, it will start to be negative or will start not being optimal, and I will start to negatively affect other parts of our karate training, and that's not what we want. We want to be efficient and to make the most out of each minute of our karateka's training, okay? So let's see what I consider the second mistake. It has to be, it's related to lack of recovery between sets, exercises, sessions, okay? This is another big problem. In speed and power training, we need to recover. So I can perform the reps of the next set without fatigue, or with a very, 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 very little level of fatigue. If I just ask my karateka to perform as fast as possible, a displacement, a punch, etc., 30 times in a row, 40 times, 50 times, 60 times, I'm entering the endurance training zone, okay? On average, a human being can keep the levels, the highest levels of speed or power during 6, 7, 8 reps in a row. Not more than that, 10, let's suppose, okay? But sometimes even less, 3, 4 times before the speed starts to decay. And when speed starts to decay, I'm not longer stimulating maximum speed or power development. I'm entering the endurance training zone. That is also important, I repeat, but when I just want to make my karateka faster and develop more power in their punches, for example, or kicks, it's not the best way of doing it, okay? I have to, for example, make a set of a given exercise, jumps, punching the bag, making a displacement, going to the gym, making some sort of method, ballistic training, plyometric training, etc. I always have to ensure that each rep in the training session, it's made without fatigue or with a very, very, very little level of fatigue. Okay, this is very important. So what can I do to accomplish that? First, I have to respect the level of conditioning of my karatekas. I may have a karateka that can only perform 2 sets in his maximum speed or power production, performance, but I may have a karateka that can perform 5 sets of the same exercise with that level of performance. So I have to try to understand in the groups I have in my dojo with the athletes, for example, I work with. If I see that group with 20 karatekas, most of them break in the 3rd set of a given exercise to develop speed or power. I have 2 choices. I can change the stimulus and go and make technical training or other things, or I keep going and I will start entering the endurance training, the stamina training, the speed endurance training, the endurance speed training, call it what you want, is always endurance, okay? The ability to keep my performance as high as possible, even when I'm tired, okay? So when I want to develop and optimize their training, I have to give importance to recovery. Even between sessions, it's not possible to stimulate, for example, my lower limbs power and speed, trying, I'm seeing some comments here. I'm going to answer it when I finish, okay? So because I was sharing the screen, I didn't see it. So between sessions, it's not possible to stimulate in an optimal way my speed and power every day to the same body segment, for example. I always have to make at least 48 hours of rest or other training stimulus, okay, strength, endurance, etc. But I'm not going to be effective trying. Let's suppose that you have a grading exam in a month or a competition in next month. It doesn't matter, okay? The example. You identify that your karatekas are not as fast as you wish, okay? So you will try to condense all the speed training in 1 month. If you make it with the 48 hours interval, for example, for the lower limbs, you will have more results than trying to stimulate that variable every day, because you don't give the time to the neuromuscular system to recover. So in 48 hours, you can perform your best for your lower limbs in terms of speed and power. It's more productive to give another stimulus. For example, you train power or speed on Monday. Tuesday, you make another different thing, and on Wednesday, you come back to speed or power training for your lower limbs. If you put it on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, blah, 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 you are just putting more and more fatigue, and your karateka will get to the competition, to the grading exam, fatigued, tired, okay, without being able to perform at their best, or they didn't have the results you were expecting, okay? So let's try to understand the role of recovery. Recovery is not just a matter of injury prevention, etc. That is also important, but that's not that. Recovery is a very active part of the success of speed and power training. It's not just the load, it's not just the execution speed, it's not just the rep, it's not just the exercise. Recovery is essential to have results in your speed and power development in the short, middle, and long term. Okay, it's not possible to do it effectively and optimally other way. Okay, so let's go to the third mistake that I want to bring you here. That's the timing when you try to train speed or power. Okay, when most of us, at least most of our students, are not athletes, are karatekas that go to the dojo and train twice a week, 3 times per week, once a week. They go there to stay active, to learn self-defense, to etc. It doesn't matter the goal they have, but they are not athletes. Okay, so most of the times we need to mix several training parts during a session. We have to include technical improvement, learning new skills, endurance, strength, speed, power, etc., tactics in terms of fighting. Okay, so when should I introduce or integrate the speed and power training during a session or even a day? Let's suppose you have athletes that train twice a day, for example. The best timing to introduce speed or power training is when you are less fatigued. So if we look to if we look at a training session, we have the warm-up, and right after the warm-up is the best part of the training session to ask for maximal speed or maximal power production. Because if you put it in the last part of the lesson, they are already training for 45 minutes, half an hour, I don't know, and they are already with a level of fatigue that won't let them perform their best performance in terms of speed and power. And the only way we can stimulate our neuromuscular system to fire our muscles faster, and the reaction of the fibers to that firing, okay, it's when we are not fatigued. Don't forget this. This is very important, okay? The best part of introducing speed and power training is in the beginning of the lesson, after a regular warm-up, 10-15 minutes. I don't know the time you have in your lessons, but right after that, it's the best. It's the where you are most productive in terms of speed and power training. Okay, so don't let it to the end. If you have, for example, of course, we always depend on the priorities we have in a given training cycle, for example. But if you want to introduce that type of training, do it at the beginning. If you don't want the speed and power to be a priority in a given training session, okay, great. After the warm-up, train kata, technical improvement, tactical situations in fighting, etc., etc. And at the end of the session, you will ask your karatekas to perform a given exercise as fast as possible, but it will mostly be an endurance training. Okay, it won't necessarily be really effective to speed and power development. Okay, so that's important to understand. I'm seeing my notes if I don't miss anything. Listen, these are the 3 main mistakes I find in karate training in terms of speed and power. I'm just talking about the physical part of speed. I'm not talking about the speed during an open fight, because in a fight we also have the cognitive part of speed, the reaction, the ability to recognize the action of the opponent, to decide, okay, which is the best response to that action, and then perform it accurately and fast as I can to deceive my opponent. That also a very important part of speed in a fight, the cognitive part of the process. More than half of our speed in a random environment as a fight, it comes from here, and then the physical conditioning will let me to perform the technique very, very fast. But that's a different situation, a different scenario, a different type of theme. Okay, we can talk a little bit about it if we have time, but that's not exactly the priority for today. So let's see the comments here from Eduardo and Felipe Soy. Let me see, Eduardo. Okay, so that's it. Eduardo is saying, as you can see in the chat, that old school training was to make hundreds of repetitions per technique. It was a strong spirit training rather than efficient training. And don't forget that endurance, it's not only physical. Endurance, even for an athlete, it's a very mental, is very affected by our mental endurance also. Okay, if you talk with a marathon athlete, a trail athlete that perform races of 50 kilometers, 40 kilometers, 100 kilometers, they will always tell you that the toughest part of their performance is here, not exactly here. This needs to be prepared, but the endurance is also a very mental process. Okay, so but that's important. Endurance is important, but if we want to optimize our speed and power training, it's not with the old school training, let's call it like that, just asking our karatecas to perform as much repetitions as they can. Okay, I think that right now it's clear from what I said. Then Philip Soy, it was okay. It's like a response, okay, to Eduardo. Another important thing in terms of endurance, it's let's talk about endurance. When do we stop? When should we stop a given exercise in our lessons? When is it productive in terms of technical, for example, execution? Where should I take the exercise? When should I stop? If I define that they will perform Kihon for 20 minutes, for example, we start asking our karatecas to perform a given Kihon sequence, for example, for 20 minutes. But when they get to the 10 minutes, we start seeing that most of them are losing significantly their technique, their technical performance, the form of their movement. Okay, is it productive to keep pushing our karatecas? Mentally, eventually, because we don't get mental toughness all the same way. Okay, it's not just by pushing us hard that we become mentally tougher. Okay, if that was true, we just went to a special army, okay, and everyone would get tougher just by being 6 months being beaten, okay, to the bones almost 24 hours a day. And that's not true. Many of us would become mentally tougher if the methodology was a little different. Okay, respecting more our limits, respecting our progression, respecting our demons, our physical conditioning. And so I don't believe personally, I make karate I have 39 years old, since I was 12. I never competed in my life. I always practiced a more traditional karateka, if you want to call it like that. And I don't feel that just pushing harder will work for everyone. Okay, and that will raise the dropouts of our schools, because we don't have the notion to respect as much as possible the individual response of our karatekas to training, and we just transform our dojos into a special army selection, okay, where we just beat our students from the top to the bottom, and the strongest will keep with us, and the other ones will just drop out, and will lose some students because we are just applying not a training methodology. We are just applying a natural selection from the toughest that will endure with us, will stick with us, but the majority of people are not built like that, and we can help those people that need us the most using a more good sense and evidence-based methodology. Okay, it's very important to get that into, I think, into our heads as coaches, as senseis, because I don't believe that's the best way for most of karatecas. Okay, but it's my personal opinion. It is what it is. Okay, so please send me some questions in the chat. If you want, turn on your microphone. Please, let's make this interesting. I just need 2 or 3 people to launch some questions, and then from there we start going to more practical examples. Michelle, Jackie, Nicholas, Fernando, Lily, Michiko, Gina, Joseph, if you are listening us, please make me a practical question. Yes, Flip.
Pedro, since, well, I've been into pretty much all your courses in the last year, so I do know that. But I would like to ask you, because of the stimulation of speed, like when you get the muscles to work at their fastest, and then the point where they stop doing that, how would you explain that for people? So when you have those muscle fibers, and how many times they can physically do that, because I think people don't really get that specifically. Okay, there is a physical limit of how many times you can trigger that fastest response before you start doing nothing for speed that what you were intending for at the beginning.
If I understood the question well, basically our speed and our power, well, power, it's also everything depends on strength development, okay? But sometimes we just want to move a very big load without worrying about the speed, the time we do it. But in karate, we know that we have a very short time to be effective, or to demonstrate kime, etc., etc. We value, even in non-fighting situations, training alone, for example, kata, where I don't have to be faster than anyone, I just have to be as fast as I can. Speed is very important for us. The fatigue is installed in several ways, okay? Central fatigue, peripheral fatigue, but let me get you, I think, the most simple part, I think you have to understand. Fatigue can be in the muscle fiber itself, it can be in several places, but there is a very specific place that will be the first place where we get fatigued, and it is very important for our speed execution. That is the electrical signal that is sent to the fibers to contract. Okay, in order to contract our muscles fast, we need to have a very high activation rate. That is the number of electrical impulses or signals per second that you send to your muscle fibers, and then that signal starts to get a little impaired. The signal is not efficient anymore, or as efficient as it could be, and that's why the speed training must be with a very short number of reps, because the fiber could perform at its best for longer periods of time. Okay, but the electrical signal is the first one to get negatively affected. And when the signal, the impulses don't get to the fibers properly, they won't be able to contract at their best. Even if the fiber itself had the capacity to keep contracting at that level, it is possible, but the electrical stimulus that we send, okay, to the muscle fibers will start to be affected. When that happens, we are no longer being able to contract as fast as possible or develop the most power we can, okay? Of course, power can become more from speed or more from strength. For example, if I have an Olympic weightlifter where I have to move 2 times, 3 times my body weight, for example, strength, it's a very important part, the most important part of power in that specific case. They try to also move the bar as fast as possible. It's important, but the strength part, the force part of power is more important. For us that just want to move our body weight as fast as possible, or an arm, a leg, etc., the speed dimension of power is more important, but strength is also important. That's why in a well-designed speed training program, we always have to include some maximal strength training, for example, because it will influence positively our speed, our power production, the way, for example, we take off from a static stance in kata, or the way we can effectively and very fast change direction in kata or kumite will be influenced by that maximal strength that we may have, because I can beat the inertia of my body, accelerating it from static stances or changing direction. I have to break my body and then redirect it backward, forward, in a diagonal, laterally, etc. Strength will always have an important role in that, is in terms of moving or changing the direction of my body, for example. I'm not saying that for a karateka maximal strength is the most important part of physical training. It's not, but it has an important percentage, even though it's not the most important part of strength training and speed and power training for a karateka, but it has its importance. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, Michiko, how important is cross training with weights at the gym, and what do you do personally? Well, I already answered a little bit. Training with weights, listen, if I just train karate twice a week, of course, my priority will be always specific movement for karate, because if I don't have much time, I can't lose the time I have to spend. Let's imagine you have you train 3 times per week, and you can't add any minute more to those 3 times per week, 3 hours per week, and you want to go to the gym to get better in karate. And so in 3 hours, you will take 1 hour to dedicate to the gym, and you will stick to 2 hours to karate. For me, it's not a smart choice. You should choose some other methods as plyometric training or ballistic training, something that you can easily apply in the first part of your training sessions, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. You will have results, not the best results because the volume could be a little more, but it will be better than just training karate. You will feel the benefits in your karate performance. But if you have the time to dedicate to the gym twice a week, once a week, 3 times per week, I don't know, besides your karate training, training with weights in the gym is beneficial if it's well done. Okay, so let's suppose you go to the gym and you will just use hypertrophy type of training, okay, without being worried with the execution speed of the movement, of the moving the load, for example. In the first 6 months, 12 months, you will feel benefits in karate, because if you if you raise your strength a little bit more, that will, in a very early phase of your physical conditioning, you will develop more power for karate, and eventually will get you faster. Okay, but from there, from 1 year, 1.5 years, that's not enough. Just building strength, it's not enough. You have to include rapid strength training, plyometric training, ballistic training, explosive training with maximal or super maximal loads, etc., etc. In other words, training with loads, it can be weights, okay, but where you will use a protocol with a very little number of repetitions, a little number of sets, and you will, in those methods, try to move the load or your body as fast as possible. That's a very important part of your speed and power training, even in the gym. Okay, for example, if you have a Smith machine, a multi-power, that bar that slides, okay, that sliding bar that some gyms have. For example, if you put a light load, it doesn't have to be a heavy load, a light load, for example, and you make jumps, for example, 6 jumps per set from a static stance, that is ballistic training, and that will help you to, for example, be faster, be more powerful in your kicks, in your displacements, taking off kata stances, changing direction, etc., etc. The same thing, launching the bar with your arms, for example, will develop your power to a punch, for example. I could be here, okay, it's lots of things to talk, but yes, weight training, it can be very, very useful for karateka, okay, in contrast to what we always listened, okay, from from some of our senseis, okay, that defend that muscle mass is bad and will harm your technique and etc., will make you slower, will make you less flexible, will make you a blah 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 blah. That couldn't be wronger. Okay, if I go to the gym and I develop muscle mass, of course, if I get like Ronnie Coleman or like Arnold Schwarzenegger, etc., etc., that just focus on hypertrophy, they don't stimulate the muscle mass they develop to contract fast. Okay, that's one of the problems that make us slower when we train with weights. It's because I don't know how to use the weights properly to still be fast in karate. Okay, I focus for 10 years just on hypertrophy. Of course, I'm lacking a lots of training, very important for speed and power. But if I develop some muscle mass, natural muscle mass, if I go to the gym and in 2 years I gain 5 kilograms in muscle mass, won't be any problem for my technique if I keep training karate, of course. It won't be a problem for my flexibility, for my mobility, because another problem with most of the people that go to the gym with the aesthetical worries in terms of hypertrophy is that they focus 100% of their time to training to develop muscle mass. They don't stretch, they don't make another sport that make a functional stretch, they just stop stretching. And then we have an additional problem that many bodybuilders, if you want to call it like this, have the myth that if they stretch at the end of the hypertrophy session, their muscles won't grow as much as they could. That's a myth. That's not true. So they just contract. They don't make any mobility or flexibility training. And of course, we stop making wide movements. And our body is the same thing when I was 15 years old. If let's suppose you trained at 15 years old 3 times per week karate, you made a lot of stretch, Jordan Gary, Shikodachi, Kibadachi, etc., etc. Then you start working, you stopped training karate. What did it happen? You lost flexibility and mobility. So the people that go to the gym and develop muscle mass, they don't get less flexible for that. They'll get less flexible because they stop working their mobility and their flexibility. Okay, so it's not a problem. I know lots of karatekas and other combat sports athletes that their thighs are double the mine and make a full split, and I can't make a full split. So muscle mass is not the problem itself. Okay, it's the people that just focus on that. That's the problem. Okay, you won't be, yes. So we, for example, know some karatekas that have a big belly, for example. Okay, it would harm our technique, yes or no? Not necessarily. And they are bigger, they are tall, it's not necessarily a problem. If I can share, I'm going to share a photo here. Philip, can I share the, okay. I'm going to open here my Instagram, so just to show you one thing. I was giving a course to karate coaches in Portugal today in the morning, and we talked about this issue of hypertrophy. If you follow more or less the competition, WKF competition, you have, for example, this athlete, Emre Göktaş from Turkey. Okay, great kata athlete, great technique, European champion in team kata for Turkey, and he has this body. Okay, muscle mass is not a problem. Okay, he has a great ikite, he has a good gyakuzuki, he has a good stance, a good posture, and he is one of the best kata athletes in the world currently, and he has a well-developed muscle mass. It's not a bodybuilder, but he has muscle mass. Okay, and you have Agaev, for example. He has a good muscle mass for the athlete he is, and it's not just because that he is slower or okay. Muscle mass, it will always be a good thing if the training program is correctly managed. Okay, so proper nutrition will have a huge impact. Okay, I won't go into that because I'm not a specialist in nutrition, but of course nutrition is important. If it's 80% depends on speed and on speed training, it's not a so relevant part of course it's important for recovery, etc., etc., etc. But if you want hypertrophy, nutrition plays a bigger role. If you want just to develop your speed, it's less important. It's also important, but it doesn't have the so much weight compared to muscle mass gains, for example. Okay, a set of training sessions. Oh, we go into training periodization. It's a very wide, okay, knowledge. We have to talk about understanding what is in endurance, specific endurance, basic endurance, several types of strength, techniques, etc., etc. But in terms of speed and power, I already gave the answer that you should put your speed and power sessions when you are less fatigued. Okay, right after the warm-up, if you train twice a day, the first session in the day could be speed and power, or if you just make a technical improvement session for 1 hour and a half and you don't get that level of fatigue, you can do it at the end of the day. You have to feel your state, your karateka state, and choose the right timing to introduce speed and power optimally when they are less fatigued. Okay, from there it's easy to try to put it inside a week. But let's just call your attention for one thing. Sometimes people ask me when I'm talking about periodization, what's the best way of mixing the several variables we have to manage in karate? One thing is true. It's true. We can't optimize all the variables at the same time. That's not possible. Okay, I can't have an optimal training for specific endurance, speed, strength, technique, tactics, etc., 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 flexibility at the same time, because as much as you try, you will have always some interference, even if you manage it in a almost perfect way, you will always have some interference from one variable to another variable. So what you may develop is a system of priorities. In other words, you have, for example, a training cycle of 3 months, for example, or 6 months, or 1 year, or 1 month, or 1 week. Okay, you have to prioritize your training variables. What is the most important in that training cycle to develop in my karatecas? What is their biggest needs? Is technical improvement? Is learning a new kata? Is speed and power because they are slow? Is strength? Is this? They have lack of flexibility. What is the biggest problems they have to solve in their karate? And those 1, 2 variables for training cycle as a priority. If you are an athlete that trains 3, 4, 5 hours a day, you can have more priorities, of course. But even there, you can't have an optimal training for every variable at the same time. You have to place priorities. After 3 months, you assess the results, and you can keep the same priorities because you are not satisfied, or you can say that, okay, this is closer to what I want. Let's now focus more on this. I'm not saying that you take off the speed or power training if it's not a priority. You have to keep it, at least to keep the levels of speed and power they already have or they developed in training cycles before. But you must have the notion that if you don't put speed and power as one of the priorities, you always have some interference from endurance training or from technical training or from regular competition, etc., that will not make you to perform at your best in terms of speed and power on every training session, because there are interference points in that periodization. So you have to establish priorities for each training cycle. Okay, that's important. How does your training change leading up to an event? Okay, that's an interesting question, and I'm going to talk about it. I can't give you all the details in terms of the time we have, but I'm going to explain you the basic principles. Before a competition, before a grading exam, before an event that is a priority for your karatecas, you must use a strategy in terms of training management that is a taper or tapering, okay, that normally, generally, can go from 4 to, this is the average. It can be a little bit more, but let's, depending on the situation, but let's talk about this. From 4 to 14 days, 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks. And the 2 weeks before, the ideal 2 weeks, it's what is considered ideal. The 2 weeks before a competition, you want your karatecas to make 2 things. 1, keep intensity high, and decrease the accumulated fatigue they had in the past weeks. Okay, because if fatigue, attention, because fatigue is an important thing to training. Okay, fatigue, when it's acute, when it's a short-term fatigue, it's what obligates our physiological systems to adapt and to become in a better shape in terms of speed, power, endurance, etc. The problem with fatigue, it's a fatigue that impairs performance, especially chronically in the long term. So when I make a 3-period training cycle for a given competition, I will put with the best protocols for each physical skill. Okay, but even if I manage it very, very well, fatigue will always accumulate a little bit, even if it's not negatively, if it doesn't put athletes in the risk of injury or overtraining, etc. But fatigue will accumulate. It's a normal process. When you get 2 weeks before a competition, you don't want to lose the speed, the power that your karateka has developed, but you want them to be at their best performance at the day of the event. And if you can clean as much fatigue as possible from the past weeks of training, they will perform way better in the day of the competition compared to just pushing them to their limits 3 days before the competition. They will compete with fatigue, with accumulated fatigue. If you can keep the intensity high for those 2 weeks and decrease the volume of training, it's the best way to manage the 2 weeks before a competition. Decrease the volume, but keep intensity high, and they will be at their best in terms of speed, power, etc. And mentally, and readiness will be greater, and you will clean the fatigue that they accumulated, and they will get to the event faster and more powerful and mentally ready to compete. Okay, so the system is keep intensity high but decrease volume. Let's suppose you you train 3 hours per day if you are an athlete, or 4 hours, or whatever. You reduce from 40 to 60% the volume of training. Let's suppose you train a number that it's easier to understand. You train 10 hours a day, 10 hours per week. You reduce the volume by just training 4 to 6 hours per week. But what you do, you keep it here. Okay, very high intensity. You can reduce the time of the session, or you can keep the time of the session, but you have to put more resting periods along the session, okay, in order to reduce the net training volume. Okay, that's the strategy. And what we see in karate, even in high performance athletes nowadays, unfortunately, it's that they push their physical limits to a very close time of the competitions. They are 2 days from the competition and they are completely down physically and mentally, and that's not the best way to optimize their performance in the day of the event. It's not normal to read on the Instagram of Olympic athletes that we had in the summer complaining 3 days before maybe the most important competition of their lives for most of them, just by being once in a lifetime, okay, and they 3 days before the competition saying that were burned out, they were with plenty of muscle soreness. That's not a good management of training. Okay, we should do the opposite. We should train more before further, okay, from the competition, and when we get closer to the competition, we should decrease volume so they can recover for the training cycle they had before. That's the right strategy to adopt. That's very clear in terms of sports training in every sport, especially those that depend on speed and power as karate. Okay, it's very, very important that they are fresh to perform their best. Okay. Recovery, it's a very okay. The evidence I'm talking about evidence. I don't talk about my personal opinion, my personal expertise. I'm talking about evidence that what I share. Okay, I'm just like a bridge between evidence-based knowledge and the coaches that work in karate. Until now, the best available evidence right now is that most of recovery methods are not as effective as we believe. Okay, I'm not going to go way more into this, because massage therapy demonstrates, for example, that it improves the sense of well-being of the athlete, for example, and we can consider it that it's important, okay? Because if the athlete is not mentally well, he potentially won't perform at his best. In the long term, there is no evidence that massage therapy really prevents injury, but I'm not saying that it doesn't prevent, but the evidence available until now doesn't demonstrate it clearly. And there is a data that is clear, and it's a fact right now, that massage therapy doesn't show benefits in terms of performance, for example, 24 or 48 hours after the massage. If you grab 10 athletes that make a massage after the competition and 10 athletes that don't make the massage, if they are going to perform some physical tests, there is no difference. Okay? Why? I don't know. Because we feel better. Supposedly, our muscles eventually recover better. We feel that, but in some way, our body doesn't respond, at least in the short term, as good as we believe when we quantify the data. Okay, you make your karateka making a jump. Let's see if the ones that made the massage therapy jumped further than the ones that didn't make it, and the difference is not significant. Okay, the results are very similar, so it's the best I can answer you. I'm not saying it's not effective. I'm just sharing you what evidence knows at this moment. But it is what it is. Okay, but this is the same thing to stretching, is the same thing for most of the recovery methods that we use. We just know, evidence just know that an active recovery is better than a passive recovery. In other words, it's better to go to the gym, make some, or to the dojo, make some training, some light training, keeping active, okay, than just being at home resting for 3 days, expecting the fatigue to go off. Okay, this is an evidence. Active recovery is better than passive recovery. If we consider massage therapy as a passive recovery method, okay, if we consider if stretching is better than going to cycle in the road, or to go to the treadmill and run a little bit, or make a light intensity kata in the dojo, it's not clear what is best, what is better, okay? But active recovery is always better than passive recovery. Even cryotherapy, for example, with ice, etc., it's not clear yet, okay, that is as it is as effective as we believe. But we have time to have more knowledge in the following 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Let's see what studies start showing us about this. Okay, so thank you very much for your questions. Great. We have here right now half an hour of answering questions. That's great. Thank you for participation. Any question more, if you have it? Hello, Joel. Okay, periodization. So Matveyev was not the father, because he didn't invented the concept of training periodization, but it was the man that spread it, okay, in the sports world. And it's very important. He has a very important role in terms of the training management of the athletes. It was the first one to call the attention for the importance of variation in training, of planning training according to some priority events for an athlete, etc. But the classical periodization that it was developed and then updated by other authors, by Matveyev. Then we have Bompa, for example, that is one of the most important names in terms of training periodization. But he just made a little update to what Matveyev did, but a rigid way of periodizing training, it's not the best way of doing it. Okay, we have some key principles around periodization that we have to respect, but that old school training periodization that was planning an entire season for an entire year, we can't be so closed in our training management because we never know what the response of our karatecas will be to a given training plan. So we have to keep some flexibility and analyze the progression of our karatecas with some regularity, okay, in order to adapt the training plan according to their response to training, okay? Because even if I use the best protocols to develop speed or power, if I use it with 10 different athletes, I will have different responses between them, among them, okay? So some of them might be responding very well to the periodization I prepared 3 months ago, but some of them might not. And in those cases, I have to be flexible and change my initial plan for the entire year or season in order to adapt to the response of my karatecas. That's the right way of periodizing. I have to dominate, to master some variables of periodization, but I can't get stuck to an annual plan that is always the same for all the athletes year after year. That's not a good way of doing it, okay? We enter in what I was saying in the natural selection process. I will apply a rigid periodization for 1 year. I will have eventually a good response from 3 or 4 athletes to that training program, and the other ones won't be optimized because they didn't have the same response. They should have made a different periodization. We should have corrected the periodization along the way, and not just discovering in the national championship 1 year from now that it wasn't effective, the plan. Okay, we should redesign the map along the way, not just grab a closed map and let's see what happens. Okay, and it is what it happens for most athletes, but it's not only in karate. But in karate, I believe we have an easier task because our athletes don't compete or shouldn't compete always with the priority of results in every championship. Let's suppose you have an athlete that you want to be prepared to be the next national champion in Germany, United Kingdom, Australia, I don't know, okay, Brazil, Portugal. If you want to, I'm sorry, now I was reading a comment and I lost a little bit. I was saying that, okay, I can't remember what I was saying. It's the age now. I'm talking right now for 5-6 hours today, and my brain in English starts to stop. I will return there. Okay, I will record. I will. I know. So you want to have a national championship in a year. Okay, the national championship in your country is in a year. Okay, I plan a given periodization for that year. In karate, we can't have all the championships as priorities in terms of results. If I take my athlete to, let's suppose, 15 tournaments before the national championship, so they can be prepared, adapted to the environment, etc., I have to schedule some championships that might be a priority besides the national championship, but I have to see the other tournaments as a preparation step for the priorities. Because if I always have every championship as a priority, I'm always working on the short term, and I will miss a lot of preparation of my karatecas. We should use some of those tournaments as evaluation moments, as assessment moments. How are they in terms of technique, tactics, physical conditioning, mental state, etc., in order to adapt the training program, the training periodization. So when we get to the national championship or the European championship or whatever, the regional championship that you consider that is important, it's that moment that we consider as a priority in terms of results. The other ones, if they win, great. If they don't win, it's just a training step equal to any training session they make in the dojo or the gym. Okay, that's my way of doing of seeing things. If we were in soccer, in football, that's a different reality. They have to win all the games to be champions. They play 3 times per week, twice a week, and the management of the periodization is very hard, okay, to make. But in karate, we can prioritize 5 or 6 championships in a season, and we can manage way better our karateka's training programs. Okay. Oh, Gene, I don't know. I wanted. It was great to help you, but I don't have that information. I don't know. Okay, what if it causes arthritis or not? I don't know. Okay, I'm not an expert in traditional Chinese medicine. I'm not an expert in arthritis, so I'm sorry. I just answer what I really know. The rest, I just pass. Okay. So, but Joel, to learn periodization, Matveyev, Bompa are great authors, but then we have to go to the next step, okay, in order to understand better the periodization from an athlete. Okay. Listen, great participation. I'm very glad to have you here and with the questions. Okay.
So I think I can say, Pedro, thank you very much. It was very insightful, and I think for most of us, there's always something new to learn. No matter how long we've been practicing karate or whatever, or even a scientist, we can always have something new to learn. So thank you very much for sharing, especially thank you very much for joining us today and doing your part, supporting us with the seminar. Thank you everybody who joined today for the class. We'll be having another class in 45 minutes around that. So I'll let you have some rest, Pedro, because I know you've been working a lot today. So everybody, thank you very much. And I'll see you in around 45 minutes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Flip, and thank you all of you, okay, for being there, and let's keep in touch, okay? Thank you very much, and have a nice training session next to this. This one was to take a pause, okay? Thank you, Flip.
Thank you.
Um abraço.
Abraço.